Hey guys, this is Nick Brown at J-Tech, and tonight we are going to be learning hydraulics. Stay tuned. Hey guys, here we are. We are going to be taking apart this hydraulic ram. This hydraulic ram typically is not what you see every day. It's a smaller hydraulic ram, but honestly, God's honest truth, this type of hydraulic ram, once you take apart one of them, pretty much it's the same for all of them, okay? Now one thing I wanted to point out to you guys, I already got some bolts loose. The first step to taking apart one of these is the little plugs where the lines feed into, and the double acting hydraulic ram feeds into. Okay? Because if it was a single acting and it had weight up here, then the weight of the machine would push the hydraulic ram in, causing the fluid to flow out. This one is a double acting. Okay? So it can go in or it can go out, and both is fluid operated by these plugs right here. Okay. First thing you want to do is take the plugs out. And by the way, part of it, whenever you're rebuilding a hydraulic ram, is to replace one of these seals. Okay. One of the things I wanted to point out to you guys is how to tell if a hydraulic ram is bad just by the looks of it. As you can see right there, there's some scoring on the ram or on the rod. Okay, if there's any kind of scoring like this is deep scoring, okay, probably because it was put in a vise or something. But if there's any kind of deep scoring, whenever this ram goes back into the cylinder, fluid's going to leak past that because there's a little seal in there. There's a little seal right there. As you can see, fluid's going to leak past that. That's going to act as a passageway, and it's going to leak like a sieve, okay? So if there's any damage to this part of the rod, like for example, chrome pitting on one of our Peterbilt power haulers right there, we have some chrome pitting on one of the hydraulic cylinders, actually several of the hydraulic cylinders. So with that, if the chrome is pitted, this needs to be a smooth, absolute true smooth surface, okay, or else it will not seal correctly. So with that, that's just a little side note, guys. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to continue to take this part for you guys. Alright, so once we've got all these bolts out, okay, first thing you want to do is, I mean, honestly, there's really no way you can do this. You can start from this end by pulling this end out, or you can pull that end out. Preferably, I'd like to pull that end out, just so that way this end, in fact, I mean, unless you are rebuilding the whole thing, try to avoid taking this end out on a double acting cylinder that is a three-piece, kind of like this, three-piece housing. Take this end out first, because then, and leave that end in there, okay? Because then whenever you go to put this back together, and then the rod comes back, it'll knock this end out. It's just, it's not fun getting it back in. So with that, I'm going to show you guys taking this end out and see what it looks like on the inside. Alright, now we have the end of the rod out, okay, and now we're going to take a look at the seals. The seals, this is basically how you rebuild a hydraulic ram. Now, if you were going to be replacing the rod seal, which would be in there, which would be on this side right there, you would have to take the end of the rod out, okay? Once again, if you are going to be removing one of these, do avoid as much as possible by taking this chrome rod and avoid putting it in a vise, okay? That will ruin the chrome, that'll ruin the true smooth surface, therefore it will not seal right, okay? So unloosen one of the bolts and just unscrew it out the best you can, okay? Alright, pistons, whenever you're inspecting one of these, you want to inspect the pistons for any kind of bumps, dents, alright, anything that will allow fluid to leak past into the other side of the ram. There's supposed to be fluid on this side, also there's supposed to be fluid on that side. Well, if there's any kind of dents or any kind of pitting inside this piston, well, it's going to allow fluid to leak past, and therefore the cylinder is not going to have as much power, okay, as much strength, or hold as much pressure as it should, okay. Now over time, these seals will get worn, they'll get distorted, they'll get old, okay. That's when you need to consider rebuilding one of these. It's very easy to rebuild one of these. The only major thing I have to say about this is, whenever, and I'm always going to talk about this seal whenever I come down to a hydraulic ram, this seal right here that seals the rod, basically seals all the fluid inside the cylinder as far as the rod coming out. This seal in here, whenever you're going to install it, it's a really thick seal. It's wider than the rod, obviously, but it goes in there. Once you take the rod out, once you take the end out, okay, it's very, very easy to get to. Whenever you're going to put that seal in, you're going to be putting it in from this direction. You do not put it in from the other direction back here. Take a pair of pliers. Here, I'll show you down here. We don't have it. Okay, take a small pair of pliers like this. Okay, you see how these pliers have the little rough surfaces. Most needle nose pliers have these rough surfaces on them. Basically, take a cheap pair of needle nose pliers, take a die grinder to it, grind down the rough surfaces, get it as smooth as possible. Okay, so that if you're using needle nose pliers to install any of these seals on the hydraulic ram, on the piston, especially on the seal for the rod, okay, whenever you install the seals with these rough surfaces, you're actually damaging the seals. So therefore, when I go to put the seals in, I go to put everything back together, and I go to put it on the truck, customers are going to be very disappointed and very angry over the fact that their hydraulic ram is leaking. Okay, all because I decided to use a needle nose plier with rough surfaces. So, long story short, take a die grinder, get a cheap pair of needle nose pliers, get a die grinder, grind all these down to the smoothest surfaces possible, and then you'll be able to use this as installing new seals. Okay. Alright, so with that, that's just on a side note what I wanted to show you guys with taking apart and rebuilding one of these hydraulic rams. So with that, we're going to put it back together. It's very easy. Basically, the piston, the rod goes into that end. Make sure it's sealed. Make sure this surface is mated with that surface right there. Okay, and we'll have that back together for you guys.